Hello and welcome to the Sportlink podcast. I'm Mark Armstrong, and this week myself and John Downs are joined by a truly legendary runner in Rod Dixon. Rod has been an inspiration to so many inside and outside of running, and we're going to be talking to him about his Olympic experiences, what he'd done differently in his career, and the Kids Marathon Foundation he set up that has impacted so many children's lives. John will give us his train tip of the week, and of course there'll be a hijinks with John as well. So John, how are you, mate? All right?
Oh, very good, Mark. Thanks for asking.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, just tell us a little bit about this week's guest. So obviously, a true, I said it before, but a truly legendary runner.
I mean, this guy from 1971, when he finished 10th in the World Cross Country, to, winning the Olympic trials for New Zealand at the Los Angeles Marathon in 2013 in 1988. Like, you're talking a 17-year career. He was third in the Olympic 1500, in 1972, fourth in the Olympic 5000 in 76. Boycott of 80, he missed out. 10th in the Olympic marathon in 84. His range of PBs, he's twice bronze medalist in the World Cross Country in 73 and 82, a 9-year span. And he's just one of the all-time iconic athletes. And the picture of him winning the New York Marathon, where he's standing triumphant, is probably one of the most iconic photographs ever taken. So absolutely delighted he decided to be a guest on this. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we'll kick it off, and I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to probably ask, I don't know if you've ever been asked this question before or that. And I'm going to kind of come in the middle of your career. Well, not the middle, but kind of a bit after 72. It's the 1976 Olympic 5K final. What would you do different, if anything at all?
I would have told the All Blacks to not go on their South African tour, which meant that the African runners would have been at Montreal, and I think that would have changed the race.
Interesting.
I thought you might say something like, I would have dived for the line as well.
Yeah, I shouldn't have run in lane 3 around the bottom bend. There's a number of things that I could have done better.
So how did the race go? How was it sort of in
up to a lap to go, I was everything was right. Going down the back straight, I knew Vereen was going to try and hold on to that inside lane the whole way. I knew he was going to try and hold us out, but I felt when I moved, I had that acceleration. And then with 200 metres to go, Quacks goes past, Hildegard goes past, and suddenly I'm in 4th. So I tried to go around them all around the bottom bend. And I think that's what it was. So I just suddenly realised, you can't run 3 or 4 yards further at that pace. And that was the difference. That was, 3 yards, wasn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, I know it might not be the question you were expecting and stuff like that, but just like we all do it as athletes, what we think back, what could I have done different, or how could I have maybe done this different or whatever, stuff like that. And I've just often wondered what has gone through your head since, but, explaining those extra 3 yards at the bottom, it makes a big difference. All right.
Yeah, I think that, another factor is that I had viral pneumonia a month before. And then I had to run, then we ran the Olympic record in the heat. Foster made us run hard. I mean, I think in our heat, we ran almost 45 seconds faster than Berend did in his heat. So, little points, all different.
Little 1%ers.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, there wasn't one big factor. There wasn't one factor. I think there were quite several factors. And I think getting pneumonia in Oslo, that was about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks before, just took the edge off me. I wasn't able to train And so that preparation, you know, by the time I got to Montreal, I was getting better, but I just had lost that 3 weeks of quality training.
Yeah. I mean, this is an unknown fact to me and stuff like that. And again, it's stuff that you don't know about a lot of athletes, what goes through their preparation, what happens in the meantime, and the kind of little things that come in to mess up our preparation. That, you know, what I'm going to do, Rod, is I'm going to read out your PBs here, because there's probably a few people going to watch this podcast who've not really known your background. And even when I was looking at it, I was pretty getting my jaw dropped, to be quite honest. And I'm going to just go through your PBs and your achievements and stuff. Like your 800 is 147, your 1K is 217, your 1500 is 333.8, your mile is 353.6, your 2K is 501, your 3K is 741, 2 mile is 814, which mustn't have been far off a world record at that stage. 5K is 1317. You've run an 8:29 steeplechase, which I knew nothing about, to be quite honest. 28:35 10K, 46:50 10 miles, and a 2:8:59 marathon. You've been twice third in the World Cross Country. You've been third in the Olympic 1500. You've been fourth in the Olympic 5000. You've won the New York Marathon 2:8:59, one of the greatest races and classic races that I'd say just about everybody goes back to and watches at times. And finished 10th in the Olympic Marathon in 1984 with a host of other stuff in between. I mean, it's some career. And what I'm fascinated with is you hardly ever seem to be injured. You seem to have this long, long career where I don't know if you were or not, or if you were, it wasn't for very long. It's just an amazing career. I mean, I just keep looking. These times hold up so well today. It's frightening. So what do you put down to your longevity?
Train like an animal and drink lots of beer.
God,
I tell you, you missed out the 6 times Sunday school picnic 100-meter champion between the age of 8 and 12. Yeah, right. And those. I mean, but what we loved about that is we all got the same coloured ribbon, and you all got it like a little chocolate fish, like a marshmallow chocolate fish. And if you stayed around long enough, they had some left over, so they gave them to you. So, I mean, that you know, the journey started back just having fun and run, jump, play, and climbing trees and trying to cross the river and getting swept down and getting swept away, and you know, all those sort of things, and then, you know, being inspired by reading The Kings of Distance, and reading about, you know, Deerfoot and George, and you know, all the history, and then of course our club president was the 1948 Olympian Harold Nelson. And he went on to win a silver medal and a gold medal in the British Empire Games in 1950. So he was our club president. And our club captain of our running club was Kerry Williams, who was a 5-time Australasian cross-country champion. So a lot of good energy and a lot of good... you know, the running club was formed in 1896. The Nelson Amateur Athletic, Harrier and Cycling Club. So, you know, over 500 members. It was like another family. It was incredible. And all our mates, we used to run cross country, and you know, you had the choice of going over the gate or jumping over the barbed wire fence. You know, it was like incredible. And so that's what it was. And then, of course, my brother, there was a huge influence on me and an inspiration, my hero. And he saw in me the ability that he didn't quite have. So he started to put a lot of his energy into helping me. But it wasn't until 18 years old when I was listening to the 1968 Olympics 1500-meter final with Kino and Ryan. And I kind of said to my mates, I said, I think that's going to be me. I think I'm going to go to the Olympics. And they all looked around and said,
Wow.
how much have you had to drink? And I said, I've had a couple of beers. So, but, you know, and there it was. And that's when I think my brother John said to me, you just said you wanted to go to the Olympics. Do you really want to? And I said, yes. And so the journey began. And if there's any doubt or any times that I wanted to take time out, and he said, well, that's okay. He said, but, you know, we're going to have to put this goal of yours on hold if you want to go off and do all these other things. And so I quickly came back because I knew that was my main goal. That was my Everest. And of course, I should say at this point that Sir Edmund Hillary came to our school and told us kids that Mount Everest wasn't high enough for your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations. So there was a lot of good energy all coming in, and I think that was the foundation of what I started to do. And of course, going to the Olympics in '72, and then it was, you know, then I knew this was my journey. This was what it was. And
right.
But I was easily, you know, having ADD. Of course, they didn't know what it was in those days. I was easily drawn into everything from the 800 meters to cross country to steeplechase to, I mean, I just loved running. It was just incredible. I used to, nothing would, if somebody, oh, you wouldn't be able to run this. And I said, why not? So I would do it. And so that kind of led me to, I guess, you know, having this incredible journey that I had from 72 to, well, 84 Olympics. But I actually won the New Zealand trials in 1988. And then they didn't take me. They didn't take me. And that would have been my fifth Olympics. And I ran 2:13:20 for that in '88. So I think that was the I just thought, oh, well, that's just not going to happen anymore. 88. I was going to train through to the 1990 Commonwealth Games in Auckland, but I started working for television, and then those two just didn't work.
Right, incompatible. Can I ask, what was the reason you weren't selected in '88? What was the decision behind it? Just, again, federation politics or whatever, yeah?
Yeah, I think politics, John. You know, I've been subject to that from my early days. You know, it's quite, we're quite able to and freely use the word bullying now, but, you know, amateur athletics bullied me and maintained a very firm, strong arm. And, you know, and there was constant threats of if you don't comply, you will lose your amateur status. If you don't do this, don't do that. And, you know, they set the standard that we are going to have the Olympic trials at the Los Angeles Marathon. The Los Angeles Marathon, or the city of Los Angeles Marathon, paid the federation $25,000, took 5 men and 3 women to LA, and that was going to be our Olympic trials. I won the Olympic trials, and then they said, no, we're not going to send anybody. So that was it.
Wow.
Is that something you had to battle with, Rod, like your whole career, sort of, you sort of, you managed to perform sort of in spite of those circumstances rather than because of them?
Yes. Oh, we growing up in Nelson, we had to go to Wellington as our regional area. And so, I mean, we had to fly to the North Island, and we would go there, and sometimes you'd be standing on the start line and an official would come along and say, oh, that's not the right place for your registration number. It should be in the middle of your bag. And because my mother had sewn it high in my bag. And he said, well, if it's not put down, you won't be able to start. And so, you know, I mean, it was just unbelievable. There were things like that. It just went on and on and on. So very, very disappointing for a lot of the athletes. And that was, I suppose, in '72, after I'd broken, because I ran the world cross country in '71. But by '72, I realized I've got to get out of here. I've got to go to Europe. I've got to run in Europe. And then, of course, they tried to use the rule that you were not permitted to be away from your home country for more than 6 weeks. But we found a way to get through to the IAAF to get a tourist visa so that we could train and travel in Europe and run in competitions. And that was done through, I got a feeling it was Pekka Vassila who helped me get that through the Finnish Federation.
Right.
And then I was able to, get Dick Wax and John Walker and Tony Powell, and we all went on a tourist visa, tourist visa, I think it was called.
Brilliant. I mean, you obviously like the Scandinavian circuit. I mean, I did a bit of it myself, not as much as yourselves and stuff like that, but it's just an amazing circuit. I love the way the crowds are in lane 3. They all know what you've done. It's just the most, like, some of the venues are inside in the middle of a forest at 10:30 at night. You've got this amphitheatre and appreciation, and the weather's generally always very, very good.
Yeah.
It must have been, I mean, like, I've never been to New Zealand, and I don't know what a lot of the venues are like. I've seen some pictures and stuff. But even so, coming from such an aesthetic background as New Zealand, to come into the Finnish and Norway and Swedish amphitheatres must have been an absolute joy to behold when you first did it.
Oh, yes. We were very fortunate to have the Wanganui track, and that, of course, Peter Snell and set the world record there, grass track, and that was like that too. It was a 6-lane with a cycle track around it, and they allowed on the track meets, the crowd were able to sit on the cycle track, and so there was just an incredible amphitheatre, as you say, and so really, and even my hometown with the grass track, we ran sub 4 minute mile on that, so there were great tracks and great support from the crowds. But once you got to Scandinavia, yes, they had full stadiums, whether it was Norway, Sweden, or Finland. And some of the little country meets, we would go and run Oslo, and then, of course, Arnie Halkvik said, is there any chance of you boys going down to Bergen and to Lillesand and to Porsgrunn? And so off we went. We went on these incredible tracks. I remember in Bergen, we ran, and I said, oh, this track's kind of square. It doesn't have really, it's not really, oh no, we just go around the football field. Kind of, it's on the outside of the football field. And it was cinder track or gravel. And they said, oh, you're not complaining, are you? I said, oh, no, we wouldn't complain. And they said, well, Ron Clark ran here and he ran 8:04 for 3,000 meters. We couldn't believe it. But I did run 8:01. So I was able to write to Ron and tell him that I broke his record.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So Rod, when did you obviously did that sort of those races like set up all your Olympic experiences really? Because I mean, even qualifying for the Olympics, that must have been very, very difficult for you as well, because you had some real competitors. Yes.
Well, we still had to run the Olympic trials back in New Zealand, even although you had a pretty impressive European season, you still had to qualify, you still had to run the Olympic trials. And so, but the good thing is, of course, we'd come back to New Zealand for the summer, and you would train, and you would get the Olympic qualifying for New Zealand wasn't soft, but it wasn't as hard as some of the other countries. I think it was very achievable, although the times I was running, of course, I was in the top 3 or 4 in the world, so those sort of times that they set were very achievable for us. For Quacks, Walker, Dixon, Powell, Kevin Ross, who I thought was probably one of the most talented young 800-meter runners, just didn't quite perform on the qualifying, the Olympic qualifying races.
Right.
He'd win national races, but he just wasn't able to step up.
Right. Your Olympic experiences, obviously 72, 76, and 84. Obviously, we know you got a bronze medal in 1972. But of all of them, which for you gave you the best, obviously, satisfaction in terms of, being competitive, trying to get the best out of yourself in the day? I know you said some of the things that happened about 76, but, did you take pluses and minuses? So which one stands out the most for you?
Well, I think 72, of course, it was, I think I really didn't think that the Olympics would be a reality. But going away to the World Cross Country in 71 and finishing 10th then, and that was the stepping up. And that's when it really convinced my brother, John, who's my coach, that, we can look at the Olympics seriously in 72 now. You've got the strength. You've been running some good track. Not great, but you've been running some good track. And let's get a good cross-country season on top of that World Cross Country in March. Let's get a good June, July, August, September. And then we'll focus on the summer, and then we aimed at these various races, and each one gave us the stepping stone to the next one. You could see, my 800 time coming down, my 3,000 meter time was coming down, and then boom, I run a mile or I run a 1,500, and then I'm improved by 5 or 6 seconds. So we could see it starting to really flow. And then breaking the 4-minute mile on a grass track in Wellington against some of the leading contenders for Munich really gave me the boost. So, and then I went out and just finished second, so close in the national 1,500. And so then it was, but I hadn't qualified, I hadn't run the qualifying time. So I went to the Olympic qualifying race. And it was the Olympic trials, and I won that and broke the Olympic qualifying time. So with the 1 mile, the national championships, the trials, the Olympic qualifying, that all came together, and so it really was. It was quite spectacular development for me. And then that's when we started to really notice that I was getting the strength from all those years of cross-country running, all those strength of the Harrier days and the cross-country days was starting to come out, and starting to, in the track training, I was able to do that track training because I had that strength background. So in fact, I got my speed from strength. I learned later that a lot of athletes get their strength from speed, but I got my speed from strength. And so, of course, when we saw the Olympics and what there was going to be, New Zealand went on the European or the Scandinavian circuit as not only as a time adjustment and settling in, but also to get some pre-Olympic competitions. And it just, you could start to see the slow climb towards Everest, the development coming through, and it was quite incredible. I had some great races, but I didn't really shine. I didn't really. But the idea was not to race well in Europe. The idea was to race well in Munich. And all that training and preparation all came. And of course, got to remember, it was all written down for me. We weren't making phone calls. We didn't have Wi-Fi. Everything was, you had to, and that was the big thing that John, my brother, he was a huge influence in respect of saying, learn by doing. So those were our 3 words, learn by doing. And so when I would do something, I would need to write it in my diary. And then once a week, I would give him a call in New Zealand, and I would go through things with him. And we could just see this. It was building a great foundation, and we were doing everything right. And the good thing is too, one thing he did say, he said, don't go out and run with your 5,000, 10,000 meter runners and the other 1,500 meter. Go out and do your long runs or your aerobic runs with the marathon runners. And so I would go out with Jack Foster and Dave McKenzie, because they're both legends. And you see, and they would go out and it would the talk test, we would have a conversation. Right. And they would say, well, it's time for you to turn around, Dixon. We're going on for 2 hours, but you've done your hour easy with us. And so I would turn around and go back. And so those, and then I wouldn't do my track training when all the others were doing their track training. I did it later in the day. I didn't need to show off, and I didn't need to show other runners what I was doing. I just go out and Dave McKenzie used to come down and time me. So I didn't have to show off to Dave. So I trained my training.
With learn by doing, is that how you settled upon the 1,500 meters? Because presumably you would have had a choice sort of what you had to concentrate on, really.
Yeah, well, very good point, Mark. Because John, after I came back, and he said, "Well, what are we going to run for the Olympics?" And he said, here you are, 10th in the world for cross country. You've just run a brilliant 3,000 meters and 2 mile. And he said, and I said, I want to run the 1,500. I want to be like Jack Lovelock in 1936, and I want to be like Peter Snell, and I want to go to the 1,500. I want to run the 1,500. And John said, "That's it. Good boy. You've made the decision." And so that's, if you're going to complain about the training, that's what you decided. It was your, and of course, and a lot of the athletic people said, "Well, I think he's made the wrong decision here. He hasn't broken 4 minutes for a mile. He hasn't shown himself nationally capable of being in the top 10." But John said, "Don't worry about that. Don't be influenced by others." In fact, that was a sign that he had on made on my bedroom wall. Was, "Don't be influenced by others." So learn by doing. Focus. Be yourself. This is not grandstanding. This is not Hollywood. This is just do the work. Build. Come on. You remember when Sir Edmund Hillary came to your school and he told us, he said, "Just remember, it's the pyramid, it's the mountain, it's the Everest. You want to get to the top. No grandstanding on the way. Let's just go to the top." So it was kind of cool.
It seems like from a lot of the people you were around, Foster and people like that, and the other people you mentioned, you were very grounded. Nobody got a big head, nobody got a swelled head, but that you shared information very freely with each other to try and help each other improve, which I don't think you see a lot of. It's like, I'm going to keep it for myself. I mean, there is certain little bits you do keep back, but on the whole, the majority of it, you kind of give out. And you have to then learn, because your coach, John, was back in New Zealand stuff. You have to rely on yourself up here. You have to be very strong in your head up here. So was that down to that a lot of the races you had to go to there by yourself? You had to negotiate with the organisers. It all came down to you rather than somebody else. And is that why you think a lot of the New Zealand athletes had success, because they were doing it themselves?
Yeah, very, very much so. It was, the club environment allowed, incredible, because see, even Arthur Lydiard would tour the running clubs, and he would coach the coaches of these running clubs all over the country. And incredibly, of course, Rothmans, he worked for Rothmans in those days, and that was part of their give back to the community. And so he came and, well, I think he set the criteria that he would go and impart the Lydiard principles and philosophy of training to the running clubs. And of course, the senior members and the older members all understood that. I was a bit young to try and understand all that, but John picked it up very quickly because he's almost 4 years older than me. So he was able to understand all that. And of course, he got all the books, read all the books and got all Lydiard's books and training schedules, and then started to adapt them because he said, oh, hold on, this was written for those people in Auckland, whereas we're doing a lot more off-road and farmland running and trail running and mountain running. So we're going to, and he started to adjust it because, you see, he was out there running with me. He was actually until what, 17, 18, he was the champion. He was our top runner. And so, and then he realized about 17, 18 that young Rodney, the only person chasing him now was his brother. And now and again, you know, I'd beat him. And I think he realized then that I had more potential than he did. And he started to spend more time just bringing the best out of me. And that was pretty impressive, you know, because he knew me.
Surely is.
Yeah. And you didn't, you know, I didn't lie to my brother. I didn't try to pull the wool over his eyes. I mean, you know, you were just able to converse and anything, you know, you talk to him like you do your brother. You just get it all out. You talk about it, and you weren't embarrassed by anything. And he gave you the confidence. And you know, now and again he'd give you a bit of a clip over the ear, but that was just straightening me out.
It sounds like you've got such a special relationship with him. I mean, with sibling rivalry being the way it is, it's such a selfish thing to do, to sort of park. Obviously, he would have had ambitions, and he sort of put all his efforts into you. Yes,
yeah, no, that's right. And see, at the Olympic trials, 2 or 3 of the runners, Tony Pole, who had won the nationals, he'd qualified, so he didn't need to really run the Olympic trials because they had already, obviously, somebody had already said to him that you know, you're an A category athlete. So I had to run the Olympic trials, and it was obvious that the runners lining up. Well, that we got the start list like about a week before, and John said, "Well, hold on. None of these guys are going to set the pace up for you because they're all wanting to run." He said, "So I am going to come to Auckland and run the race. You will sit. When I move over at 300 meters to go, you will go. And if you don't, I'll kick you out the ass."
Yeah, that's definitely brotherly love, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to switch now to 1983 and the famous New York Marathon. I mean, sorry, before I do that, actually, I want to ask this one question as well. When you were third, was it 1982 in the World Cross Country, 1982, yeah?
Yeah. So 73, I got third, and 82, I got third, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've been told a story, and I don't know how true it is, and you'll be able to put it to bed. I'd heard a story that with a mile to go, you were 50th, in around 50th position, and you wound up finishing third. And somebody said that you ran this amazing last mile that you just took off, and it was just you passing people like they were stopped. Is that true? I hope it is.
I'm not sure that it's 50. I think I was back. I think probably somewhere between 15 and 20, right, maybe. But I know that I was back, and then I think it was the last 2 mile. I know it was a good. We came around, and I was running well. And Salazar and Kadir, I could see, and I just thought to myself, they're not going away, but I'm just got to get through these guys, and I've just got to get through this here, and I just want to get through here, and then once I get into my stride, I'm away, and then I did. I didn't, So I just, in fact, really, I was catching those guys down the home straight, so I probably left it a little bit too late, but I kind of figured where I was. I had a bit of a bad start, and didn't get into my stride, and the lead got away on me, and then I settled down. And then once I settled into my rhythm, then I was away. I was in control. But up until that, I was uncomfortable, and you can't do anything when you're uncomfortable. The harder you try, the further you fall back.
Yeah, I know that feeling well.
Yeah.
So you just know sometimes it's not happening, and you're trying. And the harder you try, you just got to let it settle, and then maybe hopefully the last 2 miles you can do something. It's 1983. It's the New York Marathon stuff. Your recollections of the race. I mean, I've heard somewhere you didn't follow the tangents, which is a very, very smart move on your part. What was it like those last 6 miles? In terms, you knew you were closing, but what was it like? To describe that feeling. You're closing, but what's going to happen?
Well, I think that the key was I realized that New York was going to be the defining moment for me, because I had trained like I'd never trained before for an event. I mean, I also realized that the marathon, you've got to train for the marathon. No, you haven't got about 6 races in between. That's got to be your goal. Once again, it's got to be your Everest. And here was the training that was required. And I think, and I put races aside. I mean, I used to love racing. I sometimes in my early, 81, 82, 81, 82, I was running about 36 road races. Because, obviously I was working for like PepsiCo, who did the Pepsi 10K challenge, and they gave me 20 races guaranteed. So it meant I could bring my family over, get my property in place, live, train full time. And so that set me up, knowing that I had that base for 83. I could go there and train. I went back to Pennsylvania in the Amish country and in the forests and the trails. And I just really, really focused. And it was amazing because I became a little, I was totally not consumed, but certainly committed. And because I still wrote a diary in those days, and when you could start to see the pattern of what I was doing, and then I was just being drawn into it, and it was just thinking, I've never trained like this before. I've never had this longevity and training and balance and coordination, and it was just amazing, because some of those long Sunday runs up to almost 3 hours, all through the Amish country, and was just incredible. So I knew it was all happening, and then some of the time trials I wanted to do right on what was the best case scenario. I did do a couple of races, and I won both of those. So everything was happening for me. And so really, a week before the New York City Marathon, when training was complete, I'd been through, the phases of freshening up, and as I actually flew out of Reading, Pennsylvania, to go up to New York, and as the plane for the first time sort of went over the whole of the Berks County, it was great, and I could see the trails that I used to run on, and I thought to myself, I've never been this confident and this at peace with myself that I've done everything that I could possibly do to run the race of my life. And so I went to New York really feeling that this was going to be the first time in my life I really got it right. So it's interesting. And of course I wrote my times on my fingers. So my 5 miles on my little finger, my 10 mile, my 15, 18, and 23, because I kind of knew what I wanted to go through half marathon. And the first 5 miles, I was within 2 seconds. and within 10 miles, I was 3 seconds under. At 15 miles, I mean, at half marathon, it was exactly what I imagined to go through, because I had set a goal of 2 hours and 9 minutes. I thought I was capable of running 2 hours and 9 minutes. And that was my splits. And all the splits up to 20 were pretty well right. But at 20, just after 20 miles, I came around a corner and I got on the white line. And of course, it was raining quite a lot harder. And I slipped and I felt my hamstring do a little bit of a ping. And so I had to come back. By this stage, I was in second, so I could see the pace car, but I couldn't see Jeff Smith. I saw the pace car, but I had to pull back a little bit. And wonderfully, I'd been taught about acupressure, and I was able to just go down onto that hamstring and squeeze it, and it just released it. I just triggered the release, and it started to feel settling down. So then I just started to focus. But once we got into Central Park, I could start to see the lead, Jeff and the lead. And one thing I realized, that the times that I'm seeing at the mile mark, and the times that I'm now getting from the cyclist who's a spotter for the ABC television, he was giving exact splits, so I knew I could hear the time, and I could see. And then I worked it out. Hold on, I've got 4 miles to go, and I'm closing by 2 or 3 seconds a mile, but I'm nearly a minute behind. So that's not going to work. He's got to slow down. Well, I'm not going to take a bet on that he'll slow down. So what else? And then I started to say, I've got to run these tangents. I've got to run the shortest possible rail. And so I started to run the tangents. But what I did notice, that Jeff was staying in the middle of the road. So I knew that if I'm saving 3 or 4 yards per corner, and I got 20, 30 corners to go, there's the seconds. So I'm not gaining seconds. I'm just not having to run the distance. And so, not that I was that good at math, but I figured it out.
That blows my mind that you can think that clearly during that stage of the race.
You're starting to, because I always was fascinated with the marathon, because I thought it was like a game of chess, and you've got all these different moves, and and the person who can think 5 or 6 moves ahead is going to win. So it was just, so Jeff wasn't running the tangents. Jeff didn't even look round. So I saw that as a plus, that he didn't know where I was. And then as I got closer to him, I tried to run directly behind him, outside his peripheral, so that if he did glance, I was in his blind spot. So, and then, but what I did notice, that going up Central Park South, up into Columbus Circle, he was running in the middle of the road, and it's quite a rise there, and the road is quite cambered, and so really the bottom side of the road was actually, you didn't have quite the climb to go, and so all these little things that I saw as being a plus. That's good. That's a plus. That's a plus. That's a plus. And all these pluses are outweighing the minus. And I got to Central Park, and we went in, and I caught him right on the 26-mile mark. Incredible.
Yeah, it's one of the most obviously iconic pictures. You stand there, hands up. Jeff is on the ground. It's pouring down rain, and I think there's nobody I haven't spoken to, Rod, that isn't absolutely in awe of that race, and it's one of their top 5 moments and stuff. But I'm going to ask you about, was it your first time ever running in Saucony, the shoe brand? And if so, what was it? Because what was it about that brand that you went to that brand? Sorry for cutting across you, but just wanted to know.
That's correct. Thank you. Thanks. Well, Adidas, I had a great relationship with Adidas in the 70s, but they didn't want to support me road racing. They wanted me to continue and track. And of course, when the boycott came on, and I said, well, I'm not going to come and run track. I said, our government have decided we're not going. And so I'm not going to go and run in Europe. I'm going to try some of these road races. And then if I don't like those, I'll go back to New Zealand and figure out what I'm going to do. But I wasn't going to support the New Zealand amateur athletic people in continuing on to Europe and running all the races when they had taken, they were the ones who really, the government politically put political pressure on the athletic people, but the athletic people made the decision. They were going to join the boycott because there was probably something in it for them. And so I was not going to support that. And I was very against my country. I was embarrassed by it. I was disappointed. I was angry. And so I think we were actually in Philadelphia at the time of the announcement of the boycott. And so there was a race in Philly, a 10K race, and Bill Rogers was coming. And I'd met Bill 78, 79 in Europe when he came to run some track races. And so I ran and I finished third in that race. And this was just with my training shoes on. And I thought, no, I can do this. And then I talked to Adidas and they said, no, we won't support you in road racing. So I actually had that first year, Brooks gave me some shoes and they said, I said, well, what about a consultancy fee? And they said, no, we don't want to do that. We'll give you some races to run. If you win those, we'll give you a bonus. And I remember I said, you give me $25,000 and I'll wear your shoes. And they said, no. So what they did do is they give me a list of all the races with the bonuses. And I went out and ran all those races and they had to pay me $35,000 that year.
I love it. I love it.
So, and then I went to the Sporting Goods show at the end of 80, and our great friend Ron Stanko, and he was very, very close with Marty LaCory and the Athletic Addict, and he knew quite a few of the. And so we went and met these various shoe companies, and the one group that I particularly liked was the Saucony people, the father and the son, Fisher, and we just got talking, and they said, well, they would do much the same. They would give me a stipend and then bonuses for running A, B, C races. So A would be like the Falmouth Road race. B would be some of the regional races, and then C would be just the smaller races. So we sort of figured out, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then that of course I wanted to make my own shoes. I didn't like any of the shoes that they were in production. They really didn't. I said, where's your R&D? And they said, what's that? And I said, it's research and development. We don't have one of those. And so I had to go to the pattern room, to the girls in the pattern room, the guys in the EVA and the guys in the uppers, and get them to make them. In fact, what I did do is my first rendition of shoes was I just got the girls to take stitch by stitch out of all my Adidas shoes and make patterns out of those, and let's build some Saucony shoes from those patterns, and then I'm going to start to play with the soles and figure out what I've got, what materials I've got. So slowly but surely I was able to put quite a good little team together and they were all German. You see, all German shoemakers. They were, the shoes are made
very clever on your part. Very clever on your part to trying to pick apart the Adidas shoes.
Yeah. Well, because in '73 when I was in Europe, John Bolter, the English, he was with Horst Dassler in France, with Adidas, Lecoq Sportif, and Arena. And it was Horst who said his father would like to meet me, because I actually designed, I told Mr. Spiegler in Munich what I wanted in a pair of shoes, and he made them for me.
Wow.
And to what I wanted. And so Mr. Daster wanted me to go and meet him, and I would sit with Mr. Daster, Adolf, at Hitchcock, and we would talk shoes. And he was fascinated with some of the things I was doing in New Zealand with the shoes. So I was a bit of a nutter, really. I like to hand make my shoes and get them right. I thought I was doing it. They were just perfect. I loved them. Yeah.
Is it something you're still passionate about now? I mean, what do you think of the current sort of range of shoes that are out on the market? I mean, there's been so much written about sort of carbon plated shoes and the rights and wrongs of them. Would you have run in them? Would you have liked to have given them a go? And what impact do you think it would have had on you?
I was very, very fascinated with what they're doing. I can see what they're doing. I saw 5 years ago, because I worked with the Rock and Roll Marathon series in the US, and I would see in some of those races, the athlete would come in, and as soon as we went across the line, he took his shoes off, and the agent came over with a bag and put them in, and then gave him another pair to put on. And I said,
wow,
there's something going on here. I can see this. They're developing shoes. They're doing something with the shoes. And of course, it's all about that time where carbon fiber, prosthesis, Oscar Pistorius and all, these,
yeah,
you see what was going on. And then you realize that it's not going to take long before they start figuring out how to put those into shoes. And, I mean, in my day, I just had EVA. I didn't have any selection of midsoles. So I would I would put holes in the forepart. I would put holes in the back to cradle my heel, and the forepart to roll me out. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I used different materials. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But I got it right pretty well most of the time. I always had 3 pair of racing shoes, which was a slick shoe mainly for running in the South, New Orleans and Atlanta, where it was hot and humid. The road was really hot, so I wear a very light pair of shoes. And I had an intermediate shoe and then a wet weather shoe. And so I would have those 3 pair of shoes that I would take to each race. The shoes that I actually wore in New York were my middle, because I didn't think it would. They didn't predict the heavy rain that we did get in the end, so that's why I had to be very careful about white lines, and even sometimes you come and look down the street, and of course New York's, and those had plenty of potholes, but the rain filled them up, and so you had to be very careful where you were stepping. And also, too, the oil on the road made the road quite slick until heavy rain washed it off. So, and then the camber's to wash the road away, but of course you've got to be careful not to run too long on the right, keep on the left, on the right, on the middle, on the right, the left. So you're always changing the slope of the road, because otherwise your IT bands start tightening up.
Interesting. Probably going to be the last question of what I want to ask you about, and this is about your kids' marathon project, something that's obviously you feel very, very passionately about. What was the idea behind the concept of it, and your idea of giving back to kids? Was it because of the fun and the enjoyment you had as a kid, and going to the athletic clubs and feeding in that way, and what was given to you by all these people you've mentioned, the mentors, and that perfect little bubble that you seem to have come from at that time in New Zealand? Is that what inspired you to do it?
Yeah, that certainly was the journey. But I think when I look back and when Sir Edmund Hillary came to our school when I was only 10 years old, and the pictures in the paper, and Sir Edmund told us kids that Mount Everest isn't high enough, your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations. And then, 12 years later, I'm at the Olympics. And when the media asked me who were my heroes and who inspired me, I said, well, my brother's my hero, but Sir Edmund Hillary inspired me. And when he came to our school, and they said, well, you must tell him this. And I said, well, you don't call the Queen and you don't call Sir Edmund. He's not available. But his name, phone number, and address was in the Auckland directory phone book. So when I was up in Auckland, I went around and knocked on his door. And Lady Hillary came out and said, just a minute. And she went and got Sir Edmund. And he said, now what can I do for you, young man? And I said, well, sir, I've just been to the Olympics. Oh, and I told him that he came to my school when I was 10, to school in Nelson. And he said, yes, yes, yes. And I said, and I've just been to the Olympics and I won a medal. And he looks at me and goes, you did? And so I took it out of my pocket just to support my story. And he held it and he looked at it and he said, this is very fine, young Rodney. He said, will you promise me one thing? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, will you inspire the next generation? And I said, yes, sir, I will. And he gave it back to me and closed the door. And I thought, oh my God, what do I do now? But as my mother said, let it unfold in its own way. It will come to you. Well, in 1990 is when the local school was going to close down because the funding, and the kids had to be bused an hour to another school. And I said, well, that's going to, it's going to upset the kids. So we started, I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the kids, we're going to raise funds for the school. We're going to do a fundraiser, and I'm going to get the kids into training. And so that when they come to do the Rod Dixon family 5K and 2K fun run, they're going to bring their parents with them. And I went around 30 schools within a 30-mile radius and got all the kids into training. And then they started, we saved the school, we built new classrooms, we built swimming pools, and so that really was the beginning of it. And then they said, oh, the kids run their last 2K of their marathon, did they? And I said, yeah, it's kind of how it does. So that's how the word Kids Marathon. And, of course, in going to the US and doing it with some of the major marathons. Like LA, we have nearly 40,000 kids through that program.
Wow.
And they all come to Dodger Stadium to run their final mile. And I can tell you that 80% of those kids are inner city, low income, underserved communities. So this is giving these young kids, and I will go and do high school stuff, and some kids come up to me and show me the medal, and I go, where'd you get that from? And they said, I won this 10 years ago in your program. And so it's kind of cool. And I said, what are you doing now? They're playing soccer, or they're playing basketball, or they're running cross country. But so I know the journey starts a lot earlier than a lot of people think. It actually starts in kindergarten.
Brilliant. So
it's
brilliant.
That's something I've got to ask you as well. I heard you say something on an interview on YouTube somewhere. You said you've never retired.
No.
You still run plenty now?
Yeah, still running. I'm doing more mountain biking now, and wonderfully, my daughter's bought me an e-bike for my birthday, and now I can go out with my mates and have coffee, and we can go out and ride in 2 hours, and we all keep up with one another. We're not racing one another. And it's just been fantastic. But my beach runs and my forest trail runs are still happening. I don't run along the road too much, but I go to the forest, and I've got a beach right here, and barefoot on the beach, running in the water and the tide. Just very, very inspiring.
Lovely. Great stuff.
Listen, Rod, I'd like to thank you so much for doing this interview. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your memories. Thank you for a wonderful career. And I wish you all the very, very best with the kids marathon thing going forward. Mark's just going to ask you 5 random questions to wrap it up. And again, thank you for your time. Thanks, my friend.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you.
All right, here we go, Rod. Right, so you've just run a marathon. What's the first thing you eat and the first thing you drink?
The first thing it would be a drink, and that would be a beer. I would often have a beer. Yeah. The first thing I would eat, probably a peach or an apple or something like that, piece of fruit. Yeah.
That's good. Sounds nice. Good stuff. Right, you can listen to one song to get you in the zone before a race. What do you listen to?
I actually, in my later years, especially in road racing, I tended to listen to yoga, some of my mantra stuff, my Kundalini songs. I always used to love the Rolling Stones Start Me Up. That was always pretty cool in my track days. So, yeah.
Great stuff. Great stuff. And what are your favourite trainers to wear?
Trainers?
Trainers, yeah. What?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Saucony. I mean, I've been with Saucony 38 years. We've got an amazing journey and a great relationship, and they support me incredibly with the kids. And it's just nothing better than, taking a box of shoes and giving them to some of the kids in the schools. And, and it's incredible because you see them about 6-8 weeks later at the and I say to the teacher, why didn't you give them the shoes? And they said, oh, they've been wearing them. I said, well, why are they so clean? I said, they clean them every day.
Lovely.
Yeah. So these kids, some of these kids, was the first time I've ever had a pair of sports shoes. So really cool. So yeah, Saucony. I love Saucony. I'm trying to talk them out about bringing back the Dixon in its time. With women's, especially the Lady Dixon, was the #1 shoe for 3 quarter surveys with Runners World. So I used to love seeing girls good, in their shoes, and I'd always go up and I go, I've been sent to give you a big hug. Why? And, well, because those are the Lady Dixons and I'm Rod Dixon. Yeah,
good
I
stuff.
love that.
Right, you're far too clever to do this, but just put yourself in this scenario. So you've hit the wall and you're completely depleted in a race, and you're just about to quit. You can see one person on the side of the road to give you a little pick-me-up talk. Who do you see and why?
Whoa. Well, it's interesting enough that I actually did have that situation, and there were 2 nuns across, and I went over, and of course they just embraced me and got me water and gave me one of them went into the annex and came out with a sandwich. It was just incredible. So yeah, so I'd go past a church and go in and see if they've got some bread and wine.
A bit of divine inspiration. I like it.
Yes.
Right, this one's very random. It's the last one, Rod. All right. So, what is your favourite cheese?
Whoa. I'd say brie.
Brie, good choice. Yeah. Very good. Great stuff.
In New Zealand, of course, with the A2 protein milk, straight from the farm. Yeah, we did. In fact, the farm that is actually doing this cheese and milk back in the bottles. You can see the cows. They come in, and the bottles have been loaded, so it's fresh milk straight from the cow, and their cheese is just divine. So yeah, past that.
Beautiful.
That's good. Sounds good. Rod, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. God bless, Rod, and thank you again. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
John, what's your training tip of the week this week, mate?
Training tip of the week is about when you're going to go to the track to do speed work, and especially you're going to start doing, especially after this pandemic and the lockdown. I think people are going to have to be very, very careful because they haven't been near a track. They haven't been to use other, places to train, like, grass fields, roads, trails, and they've been doing different walks. So I just think the approach coming into the track walk this time, more than any other time, they just have to be very, very careful. So probably might be better off doing things like what they've been doing on the roads, like 6 by 3 minutes, and just bring it down to the track and doing something like 6 by 3 minutes on whatever they cover, rather than trying to do Ks and trying to hit times that they might be ready for. Just let the body adapt to get back onto the track, because they're going to be way behind this time than they've ever been before. There's going to be a lot of good work put in, but don't do it by trying to get too quick and too fast.
So, John, hijinks with John. What have we got this week, mate?
Well, Rod was talking in the podcast, and he reminded me of something regarding the likes of officialdom and how they are and stuff like that. And he reminded me of a story where I was going to race in Belgium, and the race organizer rang me to say that the federation had rang in to say that they hadn't given permission. So I got on to the guy in Ireland, and I said, "Here, you've told the race organizer I've got no permission to run." He said, "That's right." I said, "Well," I said, "there's only one problem." And he says, "What's that?" I said, "Well, I've got to give my permission. So I'm saying that I'm giving permission to run, and you can't give permission that I can't run." So I ran back the organizer, and I just said, "Listen, whatever he's given about his permission, he doesn't have my permission to say that my permission to run is given to you. So I'm giving you the permission to let me run, because I'm not recognizing his permission. So it's going to be my permission that I compete." At the end of the day, I ran. But I remember the organizer getting me back to me afterwards, and he says, "I've never heard the word permission used so much in a conversation in my life." And when I got back, I just rang up the federation officer guy, a horrible man, absolutely horrible man, bully all day long. And I turned around and I said, "I'm glad I didn't let you have your permission to override," because most people would have. They would have actually been intimidated by him. So I just wasn't letting it happen. You're in control of what you're going to do, but that was the story. It came down to the word permission and how it was used, and I just said, "It's me that's running, not you. So there's nothing you can do." That was it.
Clever for him. I love it.
All right, mate.
Thanks ever so much, John.
All the very best, Mark. Take care and God bless. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. All the best.